These are the 5 things you should never do to your children if you want them to learn grit, hunger, and perseverance. This is coming from a client of mine that I spoke to today, who is a first-generation migrant that owns a chain of $2 stores from the far west, from Penrith all the way to the Sydney CBD in Sydney. And I met him today at Bankstown Central, which is where he has one of his $2 stores. And I spoke to him about these 5 things. So the premise of this story is basically he called me up for a SMSF commercial business loan, which is around $10 million. And obviously I dropped everything just to go there and go, oh yeah, let's do it, right? But when you're dealing with first generation migrants, old schoolers, 99% of the time is just talking about my life, his kids, my kids, right? He's in his 60s, I'm only 40. But he likes to deal with me because he loves my grit, my hunger. And he was complaining to me about how his 5 kids had zero hunger to take over the business, had zero hunger to do anything in life. They haven't achieved anything that was significant. They're just floating around. And he was wondering, hey, Q, the fact that, I always see you are so driven. The fact that, you could have a successful business last 15 years, and then you launch into different business, digital marketing. Now you're doing TikTok. He sees my TikToks, a lot of followers. He sees what I'm doing. He goes, why do you need to work this hard? I said, I just enjoy the drive. He goes, how do you teach this drive to my kids? And after speaking to him for for example, 2.5 hours, where 99% was the talk and 1% was about the business, I discovered the 5 traits that he did to his kids that will kill hunger. And the first trait is, he would often, as a first generation parent, father, would always give the best to his kids because he would always feel guilty that he never had that when he was a child. And the number 1 thing that kills hunger is when you give the best to your kids. And the lesson is, don't give the best to your kids. Like I surveyed him, I said from 0 to 10, did you give him the best toys? Yes. Do you give them the best clothes? Yes. Nike from JD, $300. 9-year-old is wearing them. From 10 to 18, he gave them the best tutors, the best private schools. They didn't need to work in his business. He provided because he was the first generation father. He wanted to provide for his second generation kids. And from 18 to 25, he bought all their cars. Whatever car up to $60,000, he would pay for. And that was no issue at all. And the second thing that I noticed that he would do to his kids after speaking to him for that long was that he will often, out of positive encouragement, tell his kids what they want to hear. And what happens is, if you want to build hunger in your kids, don't tell your kids that they're good when they're not. For example, he has 5 kids. Let's call him the big daddy, right? He's got 1 kid that is a paramedic in the USA, 1 kid, she's a dancer in the UK, 1 kid has been studying since 0 to 30 years old. He's got 3 PhD, keeps on studying, have never worked in his life. He have 1 kid who's a bit of party goer, lives in a back granny flat, and all he does is sports bets with his mates every day, watching NRL and all these different types of sports to bet on. And another kid that is an aspiring actor and is studying at NIDA. And all these kids, except this young kid over here, they're all 30, 33, 35, all right? And he feeds them money to pursue their goal. But never once he speaks to them and go, hey mate, I don't think you're really making it in what you're doing. If I was to turn off my tap over here, you guys won't make it. This dancer, no way. This person that keeps on studying, what? You gotta marry a wife and then have kids and then study some more? Where you gonna get a job from? If you turn off the tap, this is not gonna happen. And lesson number 3 that I learned is that he tells his kids, oh, dad will always have the money, don't worry about it, dad will always have the money. And lesson number 4 is that I found as a fault in what he did to his kids was he introduced nepotism, which means that when he was running these $2 stores and these kids needed work experience, they were immediate managers of staff that has been working there for 8-9 years, right? They were managing those people. So what happened? They had an ego boost. They were entitled. The fact that they could just go into a store and expect to be in the top position. And lesson number 5 is that this father did out of love and out of, his experience of pain that he didn't want his kids to experience, is that he never taught them to fish. He just gave them a fish, right? You want to be a paramedic and you say, oh, I support you, here's some cash, here's some cash. You want to be a dancer, dance, here's some cash, here's some cash. Instead, he didn't teach them how to fish. Maybe this guy could open his own paramedic or whatever medical practice as an entrepreneur. This person could open her dance studio. This person could open a tutoring school, whatever, right? He never taught them how to fish and run a business, except that he was only the provider. I said to him, mate, yes, I am 40 years old and you're, near 60, gray hair and stuff. And I'm not saying I'm wiser than you, but you can't make someone hungry and grit if you have your silver spoon and feeding them daily with food to keep their tummy full. You cannot have someone hungry when they're full every single day. And I said to old mate, in summary, I didn't have any of this, right? I never got the best things, right? I was told I was never great, okay? I had to prove that I am great, right? And, my dad always told me, I don't have money. You don't have to take 1 cent from me. And in terms of nepotism, my dad never had a business, right? He was like, he wasn't even working. Because by the time he came here through the refugee visa, he was already 50. He was already retired. He wanted me to go work to bring him money. And the thing is, he never taught me to fish. I had to find mentors that will teach me to fish. But again, this story isn't about me. It's about how do you teach your second generation kids as a first generation parent or migrant grit and hunger. And my version is the extreme version, is the lack of parenting and therefore trauma and significant issues that I'm trying to prove myself. That's not it. That's just the extreme end of why I'm so extreme, so hungry, right? So triggered by, just 1 small ounce opportunity, I'll just jump on it, right? But there is a balance, guys. And the balance is, it's very counterintuitive, but you need to balance. Don't always give them the best, right? Be age appropriate what you give them, right? Doesn't make sense you give a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old JD shoes from a JD, like Nike shoes from JD, that's like $400, or Jordans, right? They don't deserve that. Just be age appropriate. Don't give them the best. When you don't give them the best, doesn't mean you don't give them you give them the worst, right? You gotta be able to give them enough so they're hungry. Okay? If they want the best, they work for it. And for the kids, if they're shit at something, tell them. If they're drawing something and the drawing's outside line, oh, don't go, it's great. No, don't go, oh, shit. Just go, look, you could do better. Maybe drawing it within the lines. Maybe that look nice. And don't always tell your kids, oh, whatever you do in life, dad and mum always have the money. No, this is our money. I work hard for it. You make your own money. And by the time I retire, I'm going to spend all that money. I'm going to give it to charity. You're not getting jack off from me. Like Warren Buffett. That's how he teaches kids. And if you have a business, make sure to treat your kids as they're the lowest level staff. Right? They start from ground up. And always remember, teach them how to fish. Don't give them a fish. And if you've watched thus far in this video, it means you're a parent that has persistence and patience, and you're willing to really teach and pass on these skills to your kids. It is very counterintuitive because you love them, you want to give them the best, but sometimes giving the best feeds their belly too fast and kills their hunger. So jump in the comments. Hopefully you learned something. Maybe you want to roast or toast me. Love to hear it.